In a lot of ways, optimism influences ambition, and with the stock markets almost doubling in the last 14 months, it was only a matter of time we started receiving questions such as this. Dear team, I have been investing in fixed deposits, LIC policies, and in a PPF account for many years, and it's only recently that I've started investing in mutual funds. I'm 40 years old now and hope to have a corpus of 10 crores by the time I retire at the age of 60. Please let me know how best should I go about this process. Well, firstly, thank you for this question. It's certainly not an easy one, but the good part is A, there is clearly a target that's 10 crores, and B, there is also a timeline that is 60 minus 40, so that's 20 years to get there. And finally, there are some prior investments in traditional products like FDs, endowment policies and PPF, which can be quite useful in our planning. So in this video, we shall help this person with multiple options, some possible, some impossible, but the idea behind offering multiple paths to this 10 crore journey is to ignite the possibility that there may be one good path that he or she might be ready to explore. With that being said, let's begin. A number like 10 crores might feel a little daunting at first, but much like any plan, a financial target often comes down to three things. One, the initial investment or starting capital. Two, the annual returns. And thirdly, the duration, which in our case is 20 years. So one way of looking at this 10 crore target is to figure out the initial capital one needs and the annual returns one needs to achieve over the next 20 years. For example, if you have 10 lakhs of investable surplus, then an annual return of 26% for the next 20 years will take you to 10 crores. And that's it. It's as simple a math as one can do. 10 lakhs multiplied by 1 plus 26%. So 10 lakhs multiplied by 1.26 raised to the power 20 gets you 10 crores. And if you have a higher initial capital, which I think our 40-year-old investor will have, then it's even better. For example, say you have 25 lakhs as your starting investment, then a 20.3% annual return over 20 years actually gets you to your 10 crore target, and it's that simple. Now, I'm pretty sure what you're thinking. You're saying, how on earth is anyone going to achieve a 20% or a 25% annual return every year for the next 20 years? That's next to impossible. Well, it is difficult and mostly impossible, but if history is our guide, we found not one, not two, not three, but 19 schemes, 19 Indian funds which had achieved a CAGR of over 20% in the last 19 years. And these are regular plans. Had these been direct, then probably there is an additional 1 to 1.5% lift in the returns. However, I'm going to take the conservative side on this one and would not want to depend on something I have no control of, which is the annual returns. But the one thing we do have control of is the initial capital, and that can be a good starting point. Now, most of us don't have 10 lakhs or 25 lakhs just lying around. So let's reframe this problem a little differently. What I mean is, what if the question was more on what financial instruments are you currently investing in or have access to which offers you a return that is lower than what you need? Now remember, a 40-year-old investor, like many others, has investments in fixed deposits, PPF, and life insurance policies, all of which are probably delivering between 5 to 7% returns. Further, and we are just making some assumptions here, if this person had started a PPF account when he or she first started working and was maxing out the contributions, then in the last 15 years, the PPF account balance would be very close to 30 lakh rupees. And since one can withdraw from the PPF account after a 15-year lock-in, these 30 lakhs can be put to better use in achieving our 10 crore goal by moving this amount to an ELSS fund, which is likely to give better returns over the next 20 years in addition to 80C tax benefits. In addition to PPF, another source of your starting capital can be the annual bonus that most salaried employees receive once a year. This bonus is on an average about 12 to 15% of the CTC, and depending on your salary can be a few thousand rupees to a few lakhs. But irrespective, it should not be ignored because every bit counts. Other than this, there might be a fixed deposit or two that you might want to break, or you can get a little innovative by taking a one-time zero interest loan from your parents, which can be quite the discussion, but it's still worth a shot. The point is, look at what you have and let's ensure that one can dedicate some lump sum amount for the next 20 years, which can in turn accumulate to the entire 10 crores or at least a big part of it. To build a 9-figure wealth corpus needs discipline, and perhaps the most effective way of doing that is via the SIP route. An SIP or systematic investment plan is a technique that requires investors to contribute a fixed amount of money at a predefined interval. Now, there are some pretty interesting SIP related thumb rules that can serve our purpose, but one thumb rule that often comes up in many discussions is what is known as the 15-15-15 rule. So what this rule says is that if you start a monthly SIP of 15,000 rupees, you continue this SIP for 15 years, and if the mutual fund or the asset achieves an annualized return of 15%, then that will get you a corpus of 1 crore at the end of these 15 years. So 15,000 rupees a month for the next 15 years at 15% returns gets you 1 crore. But where this 15-15-15 rule becomes even more interesting is when we convert it into a 15-15-30 rule, which means 15,000 rupees at 15%, but in this case we extend the time to 30 years. And by doing this, we allow the magic of compounding to take over, and what would have been 1 crore per the 15-15-15 rule now becomes a corpus of 10 crores by using the 15-15-30 rule. So if you are in your 20s or 30s, then do explore giving yourself a longer runway to achieve all your financial goals, and never underestimate the importance of disciplined investing using the SIP approach. Now let's get back to the problem at hand. After all, we don't have 30 years, we have only 20 years. And secondly, we can't pin our hopes on equities delivering an annualized return of 15% or 20% or 25%. A good practice in this case will be to examine a range of possibilities based on different time periods and annual returns, which can then help us determine the right SIP amount we need to contribute every month. For instance, if we keep a more conservative estimate of 12% on equities over 20 years, the average investor would need to keep aside precisely 1 lakh rupees every month to achieve the target of 10 crores. Similarly, a more conservative investor banking on a 9% yearly return would need to apportion close to 1.5 lakhs every month to reach the 10 crore goal. In fact, if you want to play around with these scenarios, then simply head to etmoney.com and access our SIP calculator, whose link has been provided in the description of this video. And if you're finding this presentation useful, then don't forget to subscribe to the ET Money YouTube channel and share this video with your friends. Now, in a more practical sense, investments in SIPs are almost never static, which means most investors tend to increase the number of SIPs over time. This is also called stepping up your SIPs, which in simple language means increasing the amount you invest every month. For instance, we just figured that to reach 10 crores, we can set up a monthly SIP of 1 lakh rupees for the next 20 years at an assumed annual returns of 12%. But in case we don't have 1 lakh to invest, the 10 crore target can still be obtained with a number of combinations and under the assumption that the investor can contribute a higher amount towards SIPs in the future. For instance, instead of investing a lakh of rupees from the first month onwards, an investor can start almost halfway at 55,000 rupees and then increase the contributions by 10% every year. Another way is to start with just 20,000 rupees and increase the yearly contributions by 22%, which can be quite challenging a few years down the line. The fact is, there are many combinations that can be explored, and every option will have its own set of challenges and perhaps sacrifices that you need to make. Now, in preparation of this video, we spoke to a few people in the 30s and 40s just to get an idea on how they themselves are approaching their wealth accumulation. And what came out was that a combination of the lump sum approach and the SIP approach makes the task of achieving a high number like 10 crores a lot more doable. Let's look at this from a numbers perspective. For example, say we had a starting capital of 10 lakhs. Now the wealth generated from this 10 lakhs when compounded over 20 years is almost equal to you putting up 10,000 rupees every month for the next 20 years, which per our table means that instead of having to pony up a lakh per month, a lower SIP of 90,000 rupees will also do the same job for us. And per the same thread, if the initial lump sum corpus was a bit higher at say 30 lakhs or even 50 lakhs, then the monthly SIP amount would continue to go down. In our view, this combination of an initial lump sum plus the use of annual bonuses and the monthly SIPs can go a long way in helping investors build a multi-crore wealth portfolio. And since most calculators don't have a mix and match approach, we went ahead and created a simple downloadable calculator in Excel whose link is attached in the description of this video. So do download the Excel sheet and play around with the options. I'm pretty sure you'll find it very interesting. When approaching long-term wealth building, many investors tend to miss out or even ignore some important elements. The first consideration relates to the instruments that one should be investing in. Since our 40-year-old investor has a very tight 20-year runway, the choice of assets and the funds will be more geared towards carving an aggressive portfolio of at least 80% of the money going into equities. While this would attract a decent level of volatility in the portfolio, it is also the most tried and tested approach to achieving 12% or more return on investment. And having said this, it's also important to keep this portfolio away from speculative asset classes like bitcoins, which have shown periods of spectacular gains and agonizing losses. The second element we need to consider in our planning process is the fact that as your corpus comes closer to your 10 crore goal, it will be prudent of you to shift a large part of this corpus from equities to fixed income instruments. If we go back to our example, we had taken a 12% yearly return throughout our simulations. But a better way of making this plan would have been to aim for say 13% for the first 17 years and then temper down the expected returns in the last 3 years to a much lower 7 or 8%. And while we didn't use this 13%, 7% splitting in this video, the calculator we have provided in the description does give you this provision of inputting a different expected return for the first 17 years and then a different return for the next 3 years. The third major element that one needs to be wary of is that we have not factored in inflation or taxes anywhere in these simulations. And the reason for not having that in this video was to keep the planning process as simple as possible. However, if you're keen on incorporating those, then remember the long-term capital gain is 10% and for inflation you can use 6%. And with this, we come to the end of this video. The entire idea behind creating this video was to focus on the planning process, and we did that by using 10 crores as a proxy. If you enjoyed this presentation, then do tap onto that like button, subscribe to the ET Money YouTube channel, and share this video with your friends and family members. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to catching up with you next week with another insightful video. Until then.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.